Hi everyone, Jill Foster here, bringing you the next in my monthly video series, Simply Shimmer, Simply Penny Black Stamping. And this is where I'm combining two of my favorite things, Shimmerz paints and penny black stamps, with a focus on keeping things simple. So basically just stamping, paint, and of course the relaxing coloring. And this is a look at the stamping and painting that we'll be doing today. And the Shimmerz paints that I'm using are the Aqua Hues, and these are a non-shimmering watercolor, and I really love the vibrancy of these paints. And the stamp that I'm using today is by Penny Black, and it's called Scented Beauty. And this particular stamp is really good for achieving this no-line watercolor look. And this is the finished card with the painted panel mounted onto a simple note card. So to begin, I'm working with Inchy Arts art squares, and these are precision cut mat board squares, and the surface of the art squares acts as a hot press watercolor paper. So they're really great for this technique using this stamp, Scented Beauty, because I can add lots and lots of layer of color and there's no warping. And for the one that I'll be painting in the video, the rose here, I'm using Spice Marmalade Distress ink. And I'll be showing you just one of the panels that I painted, but I like to stamp several in advance and set up a place so throughout the week I can go ahead and paint whenever I have a chance to. So this one I am stamping with Spice Marmalade, but at the end of the video I will list all of the inks and colors that I used on the two other variations. So I'm just positioning this onto that ATC sized art square and stamping down. And I chose this color Spiced Marmalade because I wanted a color that was similar to the color of the rose that I would be painting. So I was doing a yellow rose, so I chose that color. It doesn't have to be exactly the same. And the aqua hues come in a little pot, and you just spray them with water to activate. Let them sit. The longer you let them sit, the creamier and thicker the paint will be, and then you just stir it up and it's ready to paint. And I just have some water off to the side, and then a towel that I use to remove some of the paint or wetness from my brush as needed. So I'm starting on one of the petals of the rose, and the color that I'm using here is the Pot of Gold color. And I'm just applying that on that one petal, very light layer, and then I'm going in with the color called Chestnut and applying that just in the darkest area of the petal. And what's great about this stamp is that where you see those etched lines, you know that's where you want to apply your darker color. So you don't have to know how to shade a rose. You can just go ahead and follow the line on the stamp. And I'll just continue to follow the same process. And I want to be sure that I'm working on petals that are not touching or not adjacent to each other. So I work around the roses, and then if I need to, I can dry it with my heat gun before I move on to petals that are touching. That way you don't have the watercolors bleeding into each other across the petals. It makes it a little difficult to tell where you're at and add your shading that way. And because we stamp this with a water-soluble ink, like the Distress ink, that ink will start to blend when we add the paints as well, so you lose that outline. So I went ahead and I just followed that process on all of the petals, and here I'm going in and just adding some finishing touches to the image. So I'm using the color Crazy Daisy here just to brighten up some sections of the image, and I think by adding this third color, it adds even more dimension to the flower. And I like bold colors, so this was just a way for me to just add a little bit more of a punch to that color. Then I'm also using that same color of chestnut to go in and darken some of the areas where I want the darkest color to be. And this will really start to make those petals pop when you do add this other layer. So watercolors tend to dry lighter, so this way you can go back in and darken up any areas by adding an additional layer of color. Then just go back with some water to blend that out into the other color. And I just continue doing that throughout the rose. This is part that I find so relaxing, just going back and fiddling around with things till I'm completely happy with it. Now this is that Pot of Gold color that I used at the very beginning, and I'm just touching that sort of near those areas where I added the darker color to blend that together. Now for the leaves, I'm using the color of seaweed, and you don't need to worry if your leaves are stamped in that orange color, the color of your rose. They will blend with this paint, and this is a fairly dark green, so it sort of blends in and you don't see this orange outline to the leaf. It's also nice if some of that does sort of bleed into your leaf because it gives a reflection of the color of the rose and just adds more dimension to the painting. So really all that's needed to do here is just apply that right over the top. I try to put a thicker layer down at the base of the leaf for some shading. And then this is the color Cup of Joe, and I'm just going to add that right on top while it's still wet to add even more shading to those leaves. This is the color I really do reach for a lot to add shading to my images. Now to paint the background, everything is dry and I'm just applying some water with my brush, and then I'm going to drop in this beautiful blue, and it is called Little Boy Blue, and I'm starting near the stamped image and then blending that out towards the outer edge and going back in with water to blend that as well so I don't have any very harsh edges where the color stops. And I'll continue to do that around the entire image. And I can always go back in and add more right near the image to darken things up and create even more of a shadow and dimension, which is what I'm doing there. And then water will go back and blend that into the outer area. Once that was dry, I wanted even more of a shadow, and so I am using now the color Blue Moon. And this is a really great color for the background. I'm adding that right on top of where I painted before, and then I'm adding water to blend that out into the already existing blue background. And I'm so sorry I went off camera here a little bit, but I'm basically just applying that paint near the image and then going back in with water to blend it. I'm going to give you another look at that right over here. And here comes the water to blend things out. You can always drop in more while it's still wet and it'll sort of start to bleed out naturally on its own. And that is the completed panel, which I just mounted to a note card with a couple of dies to embellish and some stamping up at the top, so just keeping things very simple. And here's a look at the other color variations using the exact same technique. So it was really fun to just stamp these in advance and then have them ready to color throughout the week. And I have the exact colors used on each one listed at the end of the video. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed today's video and want to see more, please be sure to subscribe to both the Shimmerz and Penny Black YouTube channels. For all the ways you can connect with and shop with Shimmerz and Penny Black, I've linked everything up for you in the YouTube description box below. And as an added bonus, if you're placing a Shimmerz order, be sure to mention my name in the comments section of your order so you can receive some free paint.